CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. All right, welcome back to CMMS Radio. I have, for me, what is a very special guest today. It's Brit Bartolini, and she is with MaintainX. We were just having this super cool conversation, and I'll jump into that. But first of all, Brit, welcome to CMMS Radio. Finally, and I'm wearing this awesome shirt you sent me like 2 years ago, my MaintainX shirt.
Yeah. I'm so excited to be here. I feel like a longtime listener, first time caller. So it's very exciting for me. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's long overdue, and the conversation we were having, the reason I'm kind of beaming is you were talking about one of your favorite things to do is to go on site, to be on the plant floor at these various facilities in manufacturing. So you can not only, see the people that you're working with, but see what they're doing and get even more understanding. And for me, I think that is one of the advantages to taking that approach, like taking some agency, taking that opportunity to get in these environments that you serve so that you have a better understanding, because that's what helped me in years past when I was working with people, was just taking things in and just learning through osmosis. So with that being your favorite part of, some of what you do, can you tell me any of the environments that you've been in? And I know you can't talk about client names or anything like that, but I want to just jump straight and away into this concept of like customers that you've helped, what kind of a problem they had, and a little bit around that, like a favorite environment that just jumps out. Oh, I remember I went to this type of a place and this is what they were struggling with and this is how it turned out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, you should know that my family comes from manufacturing. So the very first plant I visited was owned by my grandfather and his brother. It's a heat treating facility in the Bay Area. So grew up with people who had, dirty hands. And then my stepdad works for a major manufacturer in my hometown. And I've toured that facility and been to the Christmas parties plenty of times. They make glass. And if you want to see something really cool, seeing the way wine bottles are made is really cool to me. But it wasn't to him because he's worked there his whole life. He's actually about to hit his 35 year. And so it was one of the big reasons I took the job at MaintainX was to really honor my people, my community. And whenever I started, on-sites were a big thing. And I just didn't understand how you could possibly tell the story of the boots on the ground to corporate if you've never walked them. And that was a big thing. My stepdad, who I'll call my dad because I do call him that, really instilled was, you need to learn that you can say big words, you can say PLCs, you can say SCADA, but until you've walked on the ground, you don't know what we go through. You don't know what my toolbox looks like. You don't know the pressure that I'm under. Like go out there. And so that was a big push that I started making in the summer of last year. One of my first on sites was for a major construction company, probably one of the biggest in the US. It was state of the art, beautiful. The way I geeked out over the massive equipment, poor things. It was more like a museum tour for me than it was like an official business tour. But I did take what I learned from that and I made it into slides and I showed corporate. And one of the compliments I got after was, thank you so much. I don't think any of the people you're actually selling to have ever seen a work order before. And that's a lot of what we do is streamline work orders and make your work more efficient for the everyday user. Since then, I actually can't think of any of my clients or my opportunities that I haven't at least insisted on it on site, but I would say 85% I've been on site with. So I would love to say, some of my clients are motor manufacturing. It's really, really cool to see that. But I saw how a race car engine was made and I watched them test it until they wanted to break it. But also I've been to a facility where they're making units for your home and it was quiet and immaculate and every worker on the line was doing something. It wasn't all automated. It was very technical. I've seen wire being made and all of them when I'm walking, I'm always like, this is so cool. Like I am living in how it's made. And they're like, no, it's just manufacturing. It's just wire. It's just this. And I'm like, no, it's
Mhm.
not. If once you start walking a facility, even in my own home now, I'm like, I know how that picture frame is made and how is that wire made? And you start going down this rabbit
Yeah.
hole. And
Yeah.
then, of course, you can have a better point of view of what the people are going through because I followed them for a day. I told them, sit me down and walk me through this line just went down. What happened for you? How did you problem solve it? And you start to learn that maintenance actually is more of a scientist and a creative process than it is just, firefighters. They really have to use the scientific method under pressure to troubleshoot what's going on and then get creative about how they're going to solve it. And so I get to now take those stories back to my dad, and he's like, yeah, I would have fabricated the part differently too, or whatever he said. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's part of the job.
So that's the advantage. Like when I hear you tell this story and I can kind of hear it and how passionate you are about it. Um, for some people, it's like, oh wow, that's so cool. But when we take a step back and we talk about the technology, and you're on the front lines helping the people that are on the front lines that are not only doing the work to make the things, but the work to keep the machines running that make the things and all this stuff. And it makes a really big difference when you're actually there and you're in it. You've got the family influence that really helps. And it just makes you better able to serve people as to, questions they might have about why should we use this technology? Or maybe they're coming to you with a specific problem and you know how the technology is going to help augment one of those or identify and help them solve a gap or something like that. So I get really excited when I hear you talking about it because that is kind of how it happened for me too. Not exactly the same, but when it comes to, having done this now, I didn't ask you one of the more two important questions. One, how long have you been doing this at MaintainX? And two, are you specifically focused on the Western region of the US or is it just SoCal?
So I will be hitting my 2 year at MaintainX in the beginning of the new year. I am not regionally specific right now. I'm agnostic. We're getting a little more specialized in the type of manufacturing, though I don't like doing that because I geek out so hard. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
there's certain manufacturing it's really cool, but also seeing how peanuts are made are cool and right next to how an engine's made. So I don't know. But we will begin to think about regionalizing. We're really blowing up at MaintainX. We have over 13,000 customers, and the enterprise segment, which is what I specialize in, are 10,000 plus employee type
Mhm.
customers. Those are really expanding for us, so we got to get a bit more specialized.
Yeah, and I've got some visibility to that too, but I'm glad that you said it. That way I'm not like speaking out of school or anything like that. I got to hang out with a lot of your colleagues when I was at SMRP out in Fort Worth, Texas, and I know we talked about it before we hit record and you were like kind of you're
Yeah.
super bummed that you weren't there at the I mean they rented out Cowtown Coliseum and obviously Nick Haas and he was like I want to do something big coming back to my home state. I want to set the record straight that this is us, this is our thing, this is what we're doing. And the rodeo was just incredible. It was an incredible experience. If anybody hasn't seen anything like that, you got to do it. And you know, go ahead. You had something?
I was going to say, side note there, you've had Nick as well as Tyler on the show, Tyler Huff at MaintainX. So all three of us actually grew up in Dallas. And so
Ah,
we get together, we wear our cowboy boots like to our events and stuff. So it was even more upsetting to me that I didn't get to go to the rodeo with those two.
does it also mean you had a very painful Monday evening?
I did. I
All
didn't want to talk
right.
about it. Yeah, I grew up in Texas in the 90s, so all I know is winning, and the last few years I did see it earlier. I know. My fantasy league is also suffering from it. I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, we'll move on. We'll move on. So, and that was a reference to a team sport, folks. We're not going to get into it.
Yeah.
When speaking of team sports and maintenance management, asset management, these things, you get this opportunity when you're on the plant floor, when you go to these different facilities to see everybody in action. But if we take take it back over to the technology side. When you are working with someone, whether it's, maybe it's a brand new lead, maybe it's an active prospect, maybe it's someone you knew from a past life, and you're in the midst of talking about, an engagement. What are some of the more common kind of problems and issues that you discover with them that you're then going to solve? And I think what I'm getting at is maybe a little bit of a anonymized customer success type story, like a challenge that they might have had. It could be any challenge that you want to pick that you were part of, getting them in the mix, bringing them on board to MaintainX, and then being able to see them start to thrive thereafter.
Yeah. I have a really great client there. I actually just had a call with them right before, and I promise you they're more like best friends at this point than clients, which you shouldn't get emotionally attached, but I do. But I think common themes right now, right, is we need to do more with less. We have a hiring and retention and retirement problem. We are looking at factory of the future, but there's bottlenecks and we're trying to identify where the bottlenecks are. I think we're moving away from the all-encompassing solutions and starting to think more holistically about what problems we're trying to solve and solving those incrementally with the exact right tools for that, and then building out an ecosystem that plays well together. So one client example that we had, and this was a big, we must have gone on site a few times with them, but I think when I'm working with a champion, and I say this on my very first call with most clients, is how I introduce myself, is as much as I come from this background, it is my job to build the bridge between what you're feeling today on the factory floor as the problem solver and what corporate is telling me that they need to achieve in the next 5 years to hit their EBITDA goals. And sometimes those visions are very, very, very separate from each other. But there's always little things that we can focus in on to start to create those stones to build that bridge. And so with this particular client, and this is more common at large enterprise, they built their own CMMS. They had an engineer 10 years ago who was like, we can make a ticket tracking system. But the engineering dollars haven't gone back into it. The customer support's not there. The data storage isn't there. So there's a lot of lagging and all of that. And you can't actually build your factory of the future goals with that. And we knew that they were struggling with hitting some numbers that they needed at the corporate level. And they're like, we don't actually care if maintenance doesn't want to use this tool. That's just because they're being difficult. And I always like to use, my stepdad's name is Paul. I always call him Grumpy Paul. He's not grumpy. He wants me to clarify that on every station I talk to. He's not actually grumpy, but he is that guy who's about to retire, who's like, great, corporate's trying to bring in another tool without ever asking us how our day goes. And so, sure, I'll try it for a few months and it'll be gone in a few months and we're going to replace it with something else. And I never want that, right? So with this particular client, we did a few on-sites and we mapped their exact workflows within the system. And then my favorite thing to do is to pass the iPad across the table. And I will tell corporate, you don't care about work orders. I could show you a demo, but when was the last time you even touched a work order? But what I am going to tell you is I can connect anything you talk about today back to the value it'll add to the company by starting with a work order. So I'm going to pass you this iPad, and I've never given you an instruction. I've never taught you how to use Facebook, and I bet you can create a work order, and then we can move on from that, because that's how easy it's going to be for your guy who's about to retire to the new apprentice that you're trying to move up quickly. And then we can talk about, what is that going to do for your workforce? What is that going to do for your factory of the future? What is that going to do for capturing the tribal knowledge that's happening behind the scenes that you're not even privy to because it's not being written down anywhere? And that always, for me, has a light bulb go off. And that client ended up they had 3 different kind of manufacturing sites on one big campus. They put all 3 in the system. And now we're moving into putting their operators in there, using a lot more of our AI capabilities. And they're the happiest clams because they're like, thank you. It wasn't like they were trying to insult the baby that they had built 10 years ago, but it was creating the biggest bottleneck for what they were trying to envision in the future.
Yeah, this is where, when a business of essentially any kind starts to grow and they're focused on what they do, they can lose some of that visibility. It's not that they don't care, and they're a little bit less burdened by the lack of maybe visibility to these things. And I've always felt like a CMMS, generally speaking, can, capture and curate and kind of hold these data points that we want to use for these metrics. But you talked about something that's really important that a lot of folks throughout the industry are trying to do, whether they're on the shop floor or somewhere in the management structure, even if it's operations or maintenance, which I'm looking for that to kind of be both. I want them playing real nice together because they're really on the same team. And then getting up into that C suite where they're looking at a different set of KPIs, speaking a different language, as you already mentioned, EBITDA, right?
Yeah.
This is something where on the shop floor, we may know what it is, but we're not thinking in those terms. We've got other factors that are pushing and driving our behaviors. But the basic elements of using a MaintainX to see, track, and manage what's happening here, there, who's touching what, who didn't touch what, when, so that we can make an adjustment to how we behave. That's what brings it all together. It's always going to come down to people. But the case you made about how you're trying to get everyone to see the value at its core and then bring it into their world as it relates to the organization, because EBITDA is everywhere within an organization.
Right.
It's on that shop floor, it's in that trash can over there, it's in that restroom or those locker rooms, and on and on and on like that. What would you say is the most, either the most common, or you can tell me maybe the most surprising thing that came out of a successful deployment where they've brought in MaintainX, they're deploying the system, they're leveraging it, they're adopting it well, and then something came out of it? So either the most common or something the most surprising that one of your clients came to you and said, "We found this."
Yeah. We recently shared a success story where they isolated a single line and looked at the mean time to repair as well as the mean time between failures, which again is not a terminology that everyone working at corporate is familiar with. But they found that over a 6-month period, they were able to drop, I think it's 2.5 mil, of profit loss from that, because they were able to keep a critical asset online, which feeds their profit stream. And that became a no-brainer for them to now do it in every single shop as quickly as possible. We're a pretty low entry point as far as technology change goes. So sometimes it's like, hey, let's just find a single story. And this is where I spend the most time with my clients. I don't want you to boil the ocean all at once. Let's talk about a crawl, walk, run approach. Let's
Mhm.
isolate a line. Let's isolate a really manual service. Let's look at your parts room and add pictures so it's easier for a scheduler to get time back in their day because they know exactly what they're building out for you. Let's look at what your operators are doing every day for their checklist so we can start to apply some TPM principles to it, which feeds into their bigger vision, right? And so when we start to make those stories of isolated wins, it actually becomes a lot of aha moments happen across the organization. So we, as an internal team, between myself, my client success team, our support engineers, we're constantly looking for just something in the story that makes us go, that we can anchor to and add some numbers around. The other part with buying technology is everyone wants to say, let's start with ROI. And you can't until you have an ROI point to anchor to. I can make up numbers all day based on past customer success. And then you're going to tell me that's not my business, though. So
That's
I'd
right.
rather go find a single point within your business to anchor to. And then we can build that bigger narrative together.
I really like that because, frankly, it's gutsy. And gutsy is in that realm of real that we don't get as often as we would like, whether we're a customer, we're a provider, or someone that supports that in some way, shape, or form within either side, right? Could be a consultant. And everyone thinks they have to have an answer for that ROI question. And the best answer is the most accurate and truthful answer, which would be, I don't know that answer yet. Let's go find it. And let's agree on what that is, because making stuff up, it's shiny and cool and it's the promise of tomorrow, but that's not it. You're looking for real results. And these are some of the things that I don't normally expect to hear when I'm talking to somebody about these engagements. And when I hear it, I get I get excited about it because that's what people are unwilling to do. And if they would only start doing it, they'll get better and better at it.
Yeah, I think you highlighted this on a Instagram post the other day, actually, that or LinkedIn post that I was like, wait, I was really excited about what you posted there because that's true. Is you have to isolate the truth and then make that the vision. There was a client that I went on site with. I was lucky enough to get some key decision makers in the room. So of course we did demos in the morning for key team members. We did a tour. And then they were like, well, we need ROI to anchor to. And I said, sure, let's do an ROI exercise. Let's look at common KPIs you guys are measuring or that our clients measure. Give me the real numbers for these. And then we will build ROI models around it. So let's sit down in a boardroom and do that. About 30 minutes into this, everyone has a different way in which they're pulling these data points. No, everyone's debating on if that data point is even reliable because of the way they calculate it, because of who the source is, because that site doesn't actually track that. And they were having an open discussion, and myself and my solutions engineer just sat there and let them talk it out. And I said, hey, I actually think at the end of the day, the fact that we can't get to these KPIs is the business case. It should be in MaintainX, you have 10 seconds to pull up a key KPI dashboard that comes out of the box that is pulling from multiple data streams within the system to get you an accurate picture, both at the site level and across the organization. Can we anchor to that? And anchor to the points that it took you 5 different people to try to get to that point. Can we anchor to that? And they're like, yeah. And that's a more compelling story than me making up what ROI would be for you. You can't even get there.
Well, you're paying attention to what they're talking about, what they're focused on, and where they're having their struggles. And the difference is it's not made up. You're observing, you're listening, you're asking questions, and that's what it's really all about. Too often, any technology, any even products are sold into based on what they are and what they do, as opposed to what someone actually needs.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing because if too many of the business processes are adjusted to match a solution when we're talking about software like computerized maintenance management software or something similar, EAM, that could be a problem. So that's interesting. I want to, you had something to add. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, because of your post, you said you have 2 ears, one mouth for a reason. I didn't start my life in maintenance for sure. I didn't even start my life in sales, but I have a natural curiosity. I get obsessive over very easily over little things. Like, don't look at my podcast list because I can tell you everything about Mayan pyramids and ancient queens all at the same time.
Yeah.
But I always tell like our newer reps, you do a lot of trade shows, right? I will watch people walk into our booth and people will immediately start pitching MaintainX. And I'm like, no, you need to ask at least 5 questions. And it needs to be questions relating to what you heard last, not the endpoint you're trying to get to. You should not be selling to them. You need to be selling with them. You need to understand what their problem is, because you could have sold them 70% of the platform they're never going to use. And they will walk away learning nothing from you. And if you can't think of a great question, ask why 5 times. Well, our system's really hard to use. Why? Well, it's because people don't adopt it. Why? Well, because we have an aging workforce and they're going to leave soon. Why? Well, because we're having a hiring problem. Why? And like you can get there, right? But you should never just pitch. Period.
I agree. And it's, I think the pitch or the pitch slap is kind of an easy button. It has to do with the way we're measured when we're in those roles and we have to achieve something. And it takes away our willingness to be vulnerable in that moment of seeking understanding. And that's where this becomes much more about people and a hell of a lot less about software and solutioning. It's about understanding. And if if all people can do a better job of that, even the younger greenhorn, sales reps, account executives, business development reps, all of them, right? Anybody in the booth or anybody on the phones, is get a better footing on what that person is dealing with, what they really do, how it impacts their day to day in the business, maybe even beyond that. And when you start to understand those things, it's not so much the opportunity to sell something It's the opportunity to solve something because now you understand what it is. The challenge I'm always frustrated with, and I've experienced it personally too. It's like, well, I'm on a timeline. I need to achieve this by this time period or this dollar amount. And if I take this extra time, that's not going to happen. Well, if someone can flip that on its head, I'm not saying it's easy because it feels wrong because you're not chasing, right? But when you seek that understanding, I learned it, man, I don't even know when I learned it. When somebody actually said something similar to me, this idea that you have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And it's because you need to take in a hell of a lot more information than you're giving out.
Yeah. I think
So,
I think that's really important to double tap. It's where I spend the most of my time is digital transformation at the end of the day, industrial transformation. It's a people story, right? It is we are giving the frontline people a voice in my world, and we're giving corporate leadership a vision they can see. And then change doesn't feel like a mandate. It feels like momentum of like this common goal to enhance this storyline of the company and how they made this wonderful shift, and they can see the vision of what it could be like in 5 years. And with enterprise sales in particular, to that point, a lot of times at smaller companies, it's much more of a transactional sale, but we're with our clients painting this vision for months and sometimes years to get
mhm.
across the line. And every step does matter. And you can't discount, okay, fine. You want to take a step back and do a 6-month pilot? Let's do it. But let's agree on the KPIs and what we're measuring. So by the time we go to corporate, it's a much stronger sale for us to come together as a common vision between the frontline workers and MaintainX and say, okay, this is what it could be. And this is how we've exactly mapped it to get you there in the next 3 years. And that's something that anyone who's in manufacturing right now has to get behind because of the way the world's turning. So,
Yeah, and that's how it actually happens internally anyway. Even if there wasn't an external source or resource that you're acquiring something from or that's trying to bring something to you, that same process is what happens. You have to build the momentum, but it has to be based on the people and the process and everybody being bought in. And that's not a forced thing. That is something that you work at, you work towards. And when it starts coming together, you can, in a sense, feel it. You can see it. You can sense it. And that's a real thing. That's something that if we try to describe it, we're gonna run out of words because it's almost like you kind of know it when it's happening. And that's what we're all after. The people in the industry that want to make a real difference are after that because when you see that, it's almost like working yourself out of a job. You
yeah.
do so well, you leave people in such a position that they don't need you. They don't have to rely on you, although they still could. I have a lot of friends in the industry that are like, I should say, in this core group of really high integrity that really kind of put this whole thing together, and they're all about it. And I've watched that closely. I've experienced it closely for at least 3 years, probably getting close to four now, and it's great to see it. And then you see all the other stuff too, and your eyes get wider and wider open. But look, I got to make sure based on time that we can fit in one segment
Okay.
of CMMS radio that I like first timers to, I guess, suffer through.
Okay.
And um, I think because I want to do this again. I think we're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about maybe on the regular. But I want to see if you'll do the fun questions segment. Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, let's go. I
All
love it.
right. No wrong
Yeah,
answers
love
on any of
going
this
again. I
stuff.
was ready for this. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, of course. And I know, people that follow along, they know what's coming, but still, let's just rifle through them and maybe I'll come up with a bonus question. So, first fun question, what is your favorite music?
Country. I'm a country girl all day. Yeah, I flew to Ireland to go see Garth Brooks, like,
All right.
for all day.
That's serious. That's serious. All right. Fun question number 2. What is your favorite sport or hobby? And on sport, it doesn't have to be one that you play. It could be one that you like to root for. I think I have some ideas there, but I'm going to let you answer.
Yeah, I love watching football. I'm a part of 3 fantasy leagues. Couldn't tell you much, but I just love trash talking, if I'm being honest. That's my favorite sport. I was in LA for the Dodgers winning and was watching the game. I strictly made everyone go to like a really big packed place because I just like the energy.
Yeah.
And my hobby, I'm a woodworker. So my dad and he got that instilled in me. I've built 3 beds now from scratch, designed them myself, planed them myself, all of that. And so really big into transforming wood.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. I might have heard woodworking in the past, but when you talk about running the planer and those things,
Going to,
personally,
yeah.
I'm having flashbacks to when I was a teenager.
Yeah, well,
Because
we didn't get wood shop thrown at us. I had to do cheerleading, and then I was like, "Wait, I would have much rather done wood shop." So that's what I did later in my life. I paid for my own private lessons and everything.
nice, nice. I love
Mhm.
that. I love
Yeah.
that. All right, here's the big one. The big one. No wrong answers. What is your philosophy, perspective, anything at all? Is it even a thing when we talk about this concept of work life balance?
Ooh, I think I'm not a great person to ask this to. Uh, I feel like I got into sales at 30 years old based on a mentor telling me to. I thought it was a car salesman thing. I said heck to the no. I got blessed with a company that I was really passionate about their mission. At MaintainX, I'm really passionate about our clients. If I could spend every day with our clients, I would. Like I tell everyone, my friends hate talking to me about my job because I'm like, yeah, no one wants to hear about maintenance and manufacturing, but I'm here. So for me, sales is the transfer of enthusiasm. I took a day off in a few coming weeks and I booked this really important call because I was like, well, it's the only time he has and I'll make it work. And but that being said, I'm really blessed. I can work remote from anywhere. So in 2 weeks, everyone knows I have a big travel bug. I'm going to be working from Austria. Last year I worked from Greece and Italy. So like I go to museums in the morning, I have my coffee, and then I come back and work at night. I love what I do. Now, if it was a family emergency or I really want to take time off, we have unlimited vacation days. I can do so. Um, but yeah, I just love what I do so much. So it's hard for me
Well,
to answer that.
I think that's okay, and that's why I always want people to know it's not about answering it right. It's whatever your right is,
Yeah.
and it gets people thinking. They may agree, they may not, and it also gives me this opportunity to kind of let you just answer some questions based on whatever you think, and you're not thinking about, oh well, this is a podcast and all that. I love having fun with this, and at the end of the day, everything we do, no matter which way you cut it, it's a people thing, even if you lean on the technology and all that stuff. So
It's a people
i
story.
want I want to thank you for being on CMMS radio for the first time ever.
Thank you. I'm so excited. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. And I do hope we have more of these, sir.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to get in touch with Brit, you can find her on LinkedIn. If you don't find her and you need to get connected, hit me up. I'll help you out.
Thank you so much, sir.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.